If you're trying to create something that seems almost impossible, you might call it a moonshot. And you might even argue that we're living in the age of moonshots, because thanks to a combination of new technologies, it's a time when entrepreneurs and scientists are able to go so much farther and faster than ever before. I'm Jennifer Strong, and this is Shift.
Now here on the steering column is a device called Auto Cruise. You simply set the speed you want.
Self-driving robo-taxis are already on the road in U.S. cities.
As the disc rotates, a mirror reflects the light in the way that depends on how the signal was recorded.
This is the 100 terabyte I present to you Electro, the Moto Man.
Ladies and gentlemen.
I would say that one of my greatest skills is my ability to interact with humans.
This episode, we hear from the Captain of Moonshots himself, Astro Teller, on how to build and run a moonshot factory.
From Zuckerman Spader. For 5 decades, Zuckerman Spader has been a leading litigation firm trusted by in-house and outside counsel, businesses, and individuals. With offices in Washington, Baltimore, New York, and Tampa, Zuckerman Spader serves clients throughout the country and around the world in high-stakes disputes, enforcement matters, investigations, and at trial. When the lawyer you choose matters most. Online at Zuckerman.com.
Let's be real. No one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings. That's where Gusto comes in, to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on why you started your business in the first place. You know your business inside out. Gusto knows payroll, compliance, and benefits just as well, so you don't have to. Gusto is online payroll and benefit software built for small businesses. It's all-in-one, remote-friendly, and incredibly easy to use, so you can pay, hire, onboard, and support your team from anywhere. Save time with automated tools built right in. Offer letters, onboarding materials, direct deposit, and more. You also get direct access to certified HR experts to help support you through any tough HR situation. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/shift and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/shift. One more time, gusto.com/shift. Usually when I kick things off, I ask people to introduce themselves, but in your case, this feels like a question with a few more layers packed in there than just your job title. So Astro, do you mind to get us started by introducing yourself?
My name is Astro Teller. I'm the Captain of Moonshots at X, which is Alphabet's Moonshot Factory. So on the surface, I guess that introduces me. I'm not sure that that defines me, but that's at least one of the descriptions of me.
That's true. I mean, it's not a fancy title, but when I think about you and what you do, I'd say you're on a mission maybe to take down limiting beliefs and the stupid rules that hold us back. Would that be fair?
For sure. That's very important to me. I mean, I would say my longer term goal is I believe that there are ways in which we can make more value for humanity while making more for our investors and enjoying our work more by building enterprises that are a little bit different. I'm the most confident that that's true in situations where creativity is at a premium. So if it was a widget factory, it might still be true, but I know a lot less about that. But when it comes to taking moonshots, I'm very sure that that's true. And so demonstrating that, systematizing that is what gets me up in the morning. Now, to accomplish that, I believe that there are a set of things that make it more fun to be at work and more productive working on creative enterprises, like, for example, as you just described, getting past limiting beliefs, letting go of our fears or learning to cope with our fears better, learning to how to be more sort of playful and open and curious in our work as individuals and as teams in ways that sort of create a lot more positive flow, discovery, and refinement. than would happen if we all showed up like, I know what the right answer is, which unfortunately is how we're all taught to behave starting when we're like 5 years old.
That's fair. Moonshot is a word that gets thrown around a lot. How do you define it?
So the way we define a moonshot is that it has three basic pieces. One, there has to be a huge problem with the world that you want to solve. If you can't do that, then it might be an interesting piece of technology, but it's not obvious that you could make an enduring business out of it. And that's by part of our definition is our only interest in the long run is creating enduring businesses. So one, what's the huge problem you want to solve? Two, what's the radical proposed solution you have for solving that? And then three, what is the breakthrough technology that gives us some way of at least having a chance of building that radical proposed solution, that science fiction sounding product or service? You might be wrong, but if you can propose all three of those things, at least we have a moonshot story hypothesis that we can start to actually test out, bang on. And if we discover, as we often do fairly early on, no, that one's not looking as exciting as we hoped, fine, we put that one aside and we go find the next one.
So as we speak, I'm binging my way through a new podcast, which is called the Moonshot Podcast, and it's full of stories and personal insights about the many, many projects that you've been involved in over, what has it been now? Something like 15 years?
15 years. We started the Moonshot Podcast partly to celebrate all of the people and projects that have come through X, but it's turned out to be a really fun kind of oral history unpacking of the things that happen, the people who've come through. And I what I'm hearing over and over again is that it's bringing to life for people the work that we do and making it much more sort of concrete and memorable, which is great.
In a time when not a lot of ambitious or narrative or sound-rich pods have been made lately, it's really nice. It's a nice listen. But can you tell us about this factory?
Sure. So X was set up, it was originally, well, it didn't have a name at first, co-founded by myself and another man whose name was Sebastian Thrun. And the original aspiration was something a little bit like a 21st century Bell Labs. How could Google create a small thing on the side that wasn't competing with the rest of Google for innovation, and it wasn't trying to solve Google's current problems? It was trying to find new problems that Google wasn't focused on, and then hopefully new solutions against those problems. And anything was fair game. So it's very important to me that we work only at the intersection of purpose and profit. So which asking for a huge problem in the world tends to encourage us not to just find ways to move money from one pocket to another pocket, but to like actually make the world better. And over time, we've worked on things many of your listeners will know. So for example, Google Brain, which was one of the original places that industrialized machine learning in a way that led to this sort of explosion that we're all now living through in artificial intelligence and machine learning. That happened at X. What is now called Waymo, the self-driving cars project, that started at X about 15 years ago. Wing, the drones for package delivery, that's another one that came out of X. Verily, the life science business for Alphabet, that came out of X. Intrinsic, which is our moonshot for industrial robotics, that came out of X. So there's no area we wouldn't in principle work on as long as it has this huge problem with the world, science fiction sounding product or service, and some breakthrough technology way to try to get started on it. And so a lot of the way that this factory feels, when we call it a moonshot factory, because we're trying to keep people's audacity really high and their humility equally high. We have to be willing to go on these really unlikely journeys, or we're not going to find something really unusually valuable and good for the world. But then we have to be realistic every time we try that we're probably wrong. That's sort of what it means by it being unusual and unlikely. And so the whole factor, and we call it factory because we want to systematize this process. taking moonshots is really easy if you don't care about efficiency. You just get a big bag of money and you throw it at a bunch of high energy, smart people. You'll get something good, but that's not worth continuing, right? That's inefficient. So how can you do this sort of a process efficiently enough to justify continuing to do it? That's kind of at a meta level what X is really focused on. And then in the day-to-day, what that turns into is setting out on these unusual journeys and then using evidence as a way to filter them. So we look at about 1,000 things per decade, and we're lucky if 10 things per decade turn out to be sort of Google Brain, Waymo, Wing kind of quality things. So that's 100 to 1 where we have to produce evidence that helps us learn which things are actually more exciting than we thought and which ones, I mean, maybe they can still be great, but where the evidence is not supporting them. And so we should probably just leave those aside, at least for now, and focus on the ones where the evidence is sort of mounting, that there's something about this thing, whatever it is, the teleporter project, that's like a once-in-a-generation opportunity for humanity.
How do you create a work culture around that?
I mean, that's the right question. That is the fundamental question. And the answer is it has to be everything. There's no single answer to that. So I'll give you a few examples, and they're going to sound like small things, but that's because it's got to be in the small things. It's really easy to make the movie poster for your business that says what you want. But the reality is, if you do that, it has essentially no effect on the employees. Businesses the world over have discovered that telling people what you want on some poster doesn't actually cause it to be true. So the question is, what is actually most important for you as an entity, in our case, as a moonshot factory? What are those things that we really prioritize? And then do we live up to prioritizing those things? Because if we don't, then people are just going to basically do whatever they feel like doing. So we prioritize things like playing the long game. I described audacity and humility being in equal amounts. So that better start with the CEO. If I'm not audacious, then people are not going to take that seriously. If I can't also show up like, hey, here's my idea, but it's probably wrong, consistently, why, if you're working at X, why would you do that if I'm not even doing that? We just had a promotion conversation literally like 30 minutes ago about somebody. When we're having a promotion conversation about anybody in the factory, they have to believe that the things we're going to focus on in that promotion conversation are going to be the same things on the poster. If we say that we value playing the long game, being curious, being playful, being excellent at whatever it is that's your discipline, but also being a great team player and showing up in really sort of flexible and open ways, we had better be saying that stuff to each other. People are going to watch who we promote.
Of course.
They're absolutely going to watch that. They're going to watch who we give bonuses to. There are all of these little things, and all of those signals either point successfully at the same fundamental, like this is actually what we care about, which can drive a self-reinforcing process, which is what culture is, or we don't, and then culture becomes the sort of shadow culture of whatever people sort of find is the best way to get along in an organization. So our office is a huge building that used to be a mall. So in this big hallway that's the main entryway, there's a line right across the floor, and in huge letters by the line, it says, "You may not cross this line, exclamation point, ever, exclamation point. That is a stupid rule. And asking people to break that little stupid rule every day is one of 1,000 ways that we're telling people this is what we care about. There's plywood on the walls. I mean, see like driftwood behind me. There's actually, you can't see it, it's on the other side of the wall, but there's AstroTurf on that side of the wall. People read all of these signals.
Sure. I mean, you also put on skates, don't you, when you come into the office?
There you go. They're my skates.
Oh, he's raising his foot, everybody.
I'm wearing skates right now. I wear them all day, every day. I mean, partly because it's fun, but even that is sort of purposeful because having fun is part of the shtick. I mean, I do get to meetings a minute or two faster, so it is sort of productive. But also, it's a signal to people like not to take me too seriously, not to take themselves too seriously, that it's possible to be great at what you do and be playful at the same time.
Cross the line you don't cross every morning.
Exactly. With joy.
So what have you learned, and how has the place changed during these 15 years?
I would say that the main arc, I couldn't have described this coherently to you 15 years ago. Oh, this is totally the arc we're going to go on. So just to be clear, this is a Just So story seen after the fact. But seen at the end of this first 15 years of ours, I would describe it this way. As I was describing, it's really easy to make moonshots if you don't care about efficiency. You just throw money at wild people. It's really easy to be efficient if you don't care about moonshots. You just get arbitrarily uptight for long enough and you'll be efficient. But doing that thing in the middle is really hard. And you can't really start in the middle. And you definitely can't start over on the efficiency side, because if you start too far over on efficiency, there's no way to get the good crazy, the magic, to sort of take root. So inevitably, and in retrospect, this is what we did. Again, I'm not saying it was conscious, but this is sort of how it worked out. We started on the Wild West side, and we've been gradually trying to turn up the rigor dials over time in ways that don't kill off the magic. I would say that is the process. When I look at the last 15 years, we're constantly trying to evolve and learn not just the individual projects within the factory, but the factory itself is constantly in a self-reflective, how can we do this better kind of mode. And it always feels like, how can we do this better subject to this goal we have of having the moonshottiness and the factoryness sort of stay roughly in balance.
Super interesting. And I don't know if you feel this way too, maybe not since you work in a moonshot factory, but there's this moment we're living in with AI right now that, I mean, not with your work, obviously, but you look around the landscape of the last few years and it's like AI has become this crushing efficiency tool. And I keep looking around like, when are the companies going to use it to chase some dreams here? Because, I have, at least in my experience, I have not watched anybody cut their way to greatness.
I'm curious, have you ever ridden in a Waymo car?
Yes, of course. Like I said, this doesn't apply to your work. I also rode in a Zoox a few weeks ago with Jesse Levinson. That was amazing as well.
Oh, great. Well, I mean, so those are two real examples there where AI is being used in a way that I think most people, when they get in one of those cars, can say, actually, wow, if this is where AI is taking us as a future, I could get pretty excited about this. Ideally, there would be more and more of these things coming. Certainly, that's what X is dedicated to. I guess I can't really speak to what other people are working on, but we see artificial intelligence as a new paint on our paint palette, just like electricity and then transistors, computers. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, the ability to stick not just compute, but intelligence into things in our lives is like a new muscle. And then what you do with that still requires the creativity of being a product designer or of being a business builder.
Can you name all your accounts? Not just everyday finances, but investments, retirement, property, etc.? And do you know exactly what they're worth on any given day? If not, this lack of awareness could mean you're leaving money on the table. Feel organized and confident in your finances with Monarch, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean interface on your laptop or on your phone. And right now, just for our listeners, Monarch is offering 50% off your first year with code SHIFT at monarch.com. Monarch is built for busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch can help. It does the heavy lifting, like linking all of your accounts in minutes, so you can get clear data visuals and smart categorization of your spending. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code SHIFT at monarch.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code SHIFT. Probably a question you get asked a lot too. I get asked whether, AI is good or bad. And I asked back, would you say that about a hammer? Or would you ask that about a hammer? It's a tool. You can do a lot of damage or a lot of greatness with most tools. You also have a lot to say about the importance of failure. Kind of near and dear to my family's hearts. We had an uncle who once taught that class at MIT. But what do you tell people about failure?
So I'm known, as you probably know and are referring to, as a bit like the crown prince of failure or something like that. But I hate failing. I'm not interested in failing. I'm very motivated to succeed in the long run. But back to what we were saying before, if one of our things at X is playing the long game, then how good I look today, how bright and shiny an object I can show you today should not be the issue. The issue should be 10 or 15 years from now, how much value can we have produced? And if you're shooting over the horizon, if when you're starting an adventure, you don't even know if you're going in the right direction, the muscle you care about is learning. It is not progress. Why would you rush forward in any particular direction if you don't even know whether you're going in the right direction? And learning only happens almost exclusively in a moment where you have some model of the world, and then you discover in some way that your model of the world was wrong, and then you update your model. That's what learning is. And however else we want to describe it, that moment where your model turned out to be wrong in some way feels like failure to you, and it looks like failure to other people. So if we here at X want the individuals at X to be learning machines, and we want them to build learning machines, i.e. teams that are obsessed with learning and have the tightest possible learning loops, destigmatizing failure is absolutely critical to what we do, because if the moment of learning is the same moment as the moment where you feel, at least to some extent, like you failed, and you feel at all bad about failing, then you will unconsciously, or possibly even consciously, avoid learning.
That is so true.
So that's why we're so obsessed with destigmatizing failure, not because we like failure, not because chasing being wrong for its own sake is valuable. It's the learning that we're chasing.
For sure. Do you have any examples that you point to of particular moments of failure that were incredibly useful?
I mean, I'm not sure where to start because that's like our whole thing here, but sure, I'll give you some examples. Waymo, in the very early days, we thought we were making a self-driving car. We referred to it, even once we started being public about it, as the self-driving car thing at Google's self-driving cars, because that's what we thought we were making. And we had them out on freeways with people who didn't work at X. They were still Googlers, but they didn't work at X. And we had made them sign pieces of paper swearing that they would be really careful. They would keep their hands right by the wheel. There were cameras in the car to make sure that when they were using them on their commutes to work, they were super careful as a backup system for the cars. And these people, good people who cared about X and cared about Alphabet, were in the back seat sleeping. They were putting on their makeup and eating with both hands. They were not responsible. And I don't think it was just the Googlers. I think all humans are like that. Expecting humans to be a backup system for vehicles is not safe. And so we could have chosen to see that as a horrible thing and wish we hadn't found it out, but that'd be pretty irresponsible. Or a bad thing and stop the whole project. I guess maybe we could have come to that conclusion. But we actually said, wow, that is a very important thing we just learned. Stop that dog fooding that we were doing with these Googlers. We are not in the business of making self-driving cars. That was the wrong way to think about it. Actually, the business we're in is transforming mobility. We should be taking people all the way from point A to point B fully autonomously. And that changed what is now called Waymo's mentality because of this really scary discovery about the fact that humans are not a good backup system for technology in this way. Let me give you another example. We have this project called Tara. This is their logo. I'm wearing one of their shirts. This is free space optics. So it's a box about this big. You strap it to a pole, plug the internet in, and it shoots a laser up to 20 kilometers. It has to be able to see another one of these boxes. But as long as the two can see each other, then you get 20 gigabits per second up to 20 kilometers. So it's like trenching fiber over 20 kilometers, except you don't have to trench the fiber. So for less than a thousandth the cost of trenching fiber, in 1 hour, you have a fiber optic cable in the sky. And in one of their experiments, They took one of these data pipes and dropped it onto a really large apartment building, a sort of middle income slum in Nairobi called Pipeline. And so there may be close to 1,000 apartments in this huge building. And they were offering data plans, all you can eat, for $10 a month, which was a quarter of what anyone else was charging for all you can eat data. And they were like, oh yeah, we're about to get all these customers, it'll be so great. And they got up to like 20 or 30, and then it just stopped. And so we thought, okay, maybe we don't understand how to market in this region of the world. We have to figure something out. We were literally going there to remove this thing from the roof of the building. And someone said, why don't we just go ask the people who did sign up why they signed up? And as we dug in, it turned out that they were using 10 times as much data as seemed at all possible that they would need. And then we found out that each of the 30 people who'd signed up was running fiber optic cables inside the building to all of their neighbors and reselling the data. We were selling them for $10 a month for they were making $300 a month reselling our data. Now, we could have chosen to be very angry. That was our first oh, they're stealing from us. We'll stop them. And then someone at Tara said, hold on, wait, this is an opportunity. We're enabling them. We should get maybe more than $10 a month out of this. But if they want to be entrepreneurs and spread the network, maybe let's help them do that instead of being mad at them about that. So that's a situation where that's not what we were expecting. The initial reaction was, wait, this is really bad. But then we realized it was actually could become part of the business.
Really interesting. This might be asking, or a bit like asking if you have a favorite child, but do you have a favorite moonshot that you've worked on or a favorite story about one?
Well, obviously, I'm not going to pick one of my children and say that they're the best. I have 4 kids, and I'm also not going to pick one of my children to be the best. But sure, I will tell you sort of some stories that capture nice things for me about the projects figuring stuff out, but also the same project I was describing, Tara. Let me tell you the story and then why this other thing that I'm going to tell you will become obvious why it's a little extra funny. So we talk about working on the hardest part of the problem first. And I said this for years and I clearly just wasn't connecting with people. And then in a conversation a little bit like this, it was Wall Street Journal Live conference actually, about almost 10 years ago now, someone asked, I said, working on the hardest part of the problem first. And the interviewer said, what does that mean? And
I was there for this.
Oh, this was in LA, right? Outside.
Yeah, in Laguna Beach.
Yeah. So I said, look, if you were trying to train a monkey to stand on the top of a 10-foot pedestal and recite Shakespeare, which should you do first? Should you train the monkey or should you build the pedestal? And in this extreme case, it's obvious, you could pretend you're half done if you built the pedestal, but really you've done zero amount of the actual work of burning down risk here. All of the risk is on can you train the monkey, right? So you should focus on that first.
Mm-hmm.
And so somehow this became a thing. So this is now people will literally talk about the monkey on their project, by which they mean the hard, important thing they should be focused on. So Tara discovered when they went out in the world that the monkeys both hang out on telephone poles and other structures and make these poles sway. So these boxes they were putting on those poles had better be able to sort of counter sway so they don't lose track of this thing they're trying to stay pointed at 20 kilometers away. But also these monkeys are very territorial. And so you can't mount them. You can't put one of your boxes on one of these towers until the monkeys are off. So you have to wait for a time of day when the monkeys aren't there because they get very angry when bigger monkeys like us climb up the tower. And it's partly funny because of our train the monkey first mantra, but also that's such a good example of getting contact with the real world. It is so tempting if you're in the sort of just making demos kind of thing to stay in the lab. Everything's very pristine, but all of the really hard parts about moonshots are what happens when you get out in the world. And so we take a lot of delight and remember in various ways over and over again all of the stories of like, oh, this was a couple of years ago in Canberra, I think. There was a few ravens, or maybe they were magpies. I think ravens are magpies. And we're feeling very territorial. And when our drones were coming in for a delivery, like one of these ravens got really upset and started attacking the drone. And we have this wonderful video of the drone kind of like trying to shake off the bird without hurting it and doing the delivery onto somebody's front yard and then like shaking the bird off and flying away. Like that's what it really takes to make moonshots, is all of those things you would never have planned for. There's no way that in the list of things we had to make sure that this drone was good at was fending off angry ravens was going to be part of it. But that's just part of how it is. And we tell these stories over and over again. I mean, partly because they're fun and funny, but also partly because that's why we ask our moonshots to get out in the real world so early when they're really not done, is because you can't be done and then get out in the world, because the world's going to tell you what the real problem is.
Looking ahead at the next few years, what are you excited about? What's next?
We never know for sure is part of the answer. It's not like we predict the future. It might look like that after the fact, but it's actually, we try all possible futures. If we're trying 1,000 things a decade and then just filter based on evidence, the 10 things a decade that come through maybe look after the fact like we were really good at predicting the future, but it's just the winnowing process that we were doing. So the first answer is practicing the humility thing. We don't know. I will tell you that one of the things that has kind of consistently passed our tests in ways that make us go, okay, maybe this is getting ready, is synthetic genomics.
Oh, cool.
You know, humanity is going to move sometime in this decade, in this century, from biology as a science to biology as an engineering discipline. And that will be, I'm increasingly convinced, as profound a shift in the 21st century as computers were, programming silicon was in the 20th century. And so exactly how that will play out, of course, I don't know. Exactly when that will play out, we don't know. But there's enough evidence mounting that we're seeing as we sort of keep trying things that is coming faster than the rest of the world realizes, I think.
I think you're probably right, only based on the number of times I've heard that, including something very recently that stuck with me when a founder said, think about the difference between a biology textbook and a physics textbook. Look at the math that's not there in one type and realize that it will be soon. Anything else that you kind of have an eye on?
I'm really excited about all of the ways that humanity is going to learn to turn trash back into treasure. I don't think we realize yet how absurd it is that we spend $5 or $6 trillion a year making stuff, and then we get some value out of it, and then we throw it away. But that thing we threw away is already so refined. This is e-waste, plastics, old concrete from buildings, whatever it is. That is not the same as like the rocks we dug out of the ground. It's so refined already. It's nuts that we don't find a way to make a much more circular world to live in. It'll obviously be better for the planet if we do that, but it's just going to be better for humans as well. And someone's going to make gobs of money doing that. So that's another example where like we can see it coming. Obviously, there's lots of early signs of doing this, but still we're in the very early phases. Most e-waste isn't recycled. Most plastics aren't recycled. Most concrete's not recycled.
That's true. I occasionally get these fun invites to go see attempts at some of this, but it feels like shrimp shells for a year or two. There were lots of invites to go see chitin, but I'm kind of wondering now where, I don't know. Feels like it should come soon. If you were to give advice based on all the things that float around in your head, running the Moonshot factory and the years of experience you've had, to someone coming out of school and trying to figure out their space in this world, where they're headed, what's the type of advice you'd give?
Maybe my way of answering that question would be, there's only one thing that's taped up on the door of my huddle here, which is a poster of the tarot card of the Fool.
Can you describe that for people who haven't seen it?
So if you haven't seen it before, it's a young man. The most typical picture, if you look it up online, it's the first one that will come up. It's a young man. He's got sort of like a jester-like outfit. The concept of a fool is actually earlier than the jester, but he's looking up as he sets out on an adventure. He doesn't know where he's going. He's stepping off of a literal cliff into the figurative unknown. And it's sort of like the creation journey. It's sort of embodies potential. And I think there is so much for people to learn, and in some cases for people who are older to unlearn, in meditating on what do I want to be? Who do I want to be? How do I want to be in life? Because there's so much pressure in life to be serious and to be normal, to be excellent at what you do. But the truth is, real excellence, especially in creating new things, new opportunities, doesn't come from being a know-it-all. It comes from having the beginner's mind. It comes from openness, non-judgment, and lack of preconceptions. And the fool is only one of the metaphors you could use, but that happens to be one that I like. I think you can pull a lot out of that, seeing challenges as opportunities, realizing that there's often a big positive arbitrage in the unknown. It's not the same as saying it will definitely work out. I think there's a reminder about that feeling of, the fool stepping off the cliff in this very jaunty way seems really stupid. But at least part of what I take from that is, like they say in martial arts, punch through the board. If you go into any adventure or endeavor flinching, it's definitely not going to go your way. And that doesn't mean be in denial. It means you have to go into it with like abandon and passion, punching through the board, so to speak, even while holding the humility that it's probably not going to go your way, that it's going to take you somewhere you aren't planning, that it could actually turn out to be unfortunate or like a misadventure of some kind. But you can't turn that into a fear that causes you to sort of hold back as you go into the adventure, because then you're pre-deciding it will go badly. So I think there's a lot to be learned from the sort of silliness and the openness that by approaching life in those ways, there's an awful lot to be gotten that we seem to lose over time.
This has been really great fun.
No, this was great. I've really enjoyed this too, Jennifer. Thank you so much.
This episode was produced by me and Emma Cillekens and mixed by Garret Lang, with original music from him and Jacob Gorski. Thanks for listening. I'm Jennifer Strong.
From PRX.